The 2020 4Runner TRD Pro. This is Toyota's most off-road capable offering in the 4Runner lineup, and for the 2020 model year, Toyota has attempted to update this aging truck.
Have this feeling, haven't felt for so long. Took a hold on me and won't let go. I've been sleeping, caught me off my guard, 'cause you're in my space and now I'm so.
When it comes to the interior, I'm going to talk about a couple things. First, the changes Toyota made for the 2020 model year. Second, I'm going to give you an overview of what this thing is like to live with from a practicality standpoint. And third, talk about the specific bits and bobs that were added for the TRD Pro package. The changes they've made to 2020 are as follows. Toyota's added their standard safety suite to all 4Runners. So what that means is they've added lane departure assist, pre-collision warning, pedestrian detection, and adaptive cruise control. They've also changed the gauge cluster, so now you have a 4.2-inch digital display to augment your physical gauges. And they've updated the infotainment system. It's an 8.2-inch screen, which is fairly low resolution in typical Toyota fashion, but it does have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. The changes the TRD Pro package makes to this cabin are pretty minimal. You have, in typical TRD fashion, red contrast stitching throughout, embroidered TRD seats, shift knob, and floor mats. Really, the major change is the off-road suite of controls found in the headliner, which will go into greater detail when we head into the shop segment. So with that, I'm going to hop in the back seat and give you an overview from a practicality standpoint of the 4Runner. The 4Runner is a body-on-frame, live-axle 3-row truck. So this is not a luxury SUV, so you're going to lose out on some of the interior accoutrements that you may be used to from some of the other Toyota SUVs. But what you gain in return is a very practical SUV. This thing is huge on the inside. There's a ton of interior cargo capacity. Yes, the cabin feels dated, but everything's logically laid out and easy to use. And you have a ruggedized cabin. All the materials are vinyl, hard plastic, or a durable feeling leather, which means they should hold up to things like kids, pets, or your off-road adventures. This is a very practical truck if you can live with some of its compromises. The compromises are as follows. If you have the TRD Pro package, you lose the third row, which means you are stuck with a 2-row SUV. Thankfully, your trunk space has not been compromised at all. It is still enormous. Your second row, it's comfortable for children or shorter people. Your issue is not legroom, it's headroom. So if you're much taller than 6 foot, your head will graze the ceiling. Lastly, as I mentioned before, this cabin feels very dated. So a lot of it feels a little cheap, and your audio system, due to the fact that there's higher ambient interior noise, is subpar. But if you can deal with those compromises, you will probably really love this truck. So with that, let's head to the shop.
Well, it's a 4Runner, but not just any 4Runner, Jack. The TRD Pro. So this is not just one of the fake TRD badges slapped on here.
No, this is the real McCoy mark.
What's that mean?
It's something old.
The Zoomers are not going to get that. You know how many Zoomers follow this?
Hundreds.
So if you are 8 years old and you want to know about the TRD Pro, Jack's going to tell you all about it in language you can understand.
Big aluminum skid plate, Mark.
Look at that.
1/4 inch.
And it's got vents in it too. Why?
For aerodynamics, Mark.
No,
it's
that's
not.
so when you fill it up full of water, the water can go draining out of it, Jack. All right, so what did they do here? Obviously, you have enormous tires. In terms of suspension, this is where most of the work went, though.
Yeah. So you have Fox shocks, front and rear. They are extremely impressive, and they are a compromised design. So whereas, say, the Mojave we just had was designed specifically to off-road at a high speed, this is the compromise between rock crawling and high-speed stability.
And it's crazy what just a simple shock body can do to ride control and ride stability and all the things that you really care about when you're driving it. You can eliminate all the truckishness and all the crap that you get into.
This rides exceptionally well. And the fact that, unlike a Wrangler, this has independent front suspension, its road manners are far superior. And surprisingly, this tows a lot.
What does it tow?
5,000 pounds versus a Wrangler that only tows 3,500.
There's some love-hate things about the 4Runner. It's old, right? A lot of this, the interior, it just has this dated feel.
5-speed automatic, 270 horsepower,
and what does Toyota
4-liter.
Oh my God, what does Toyota say about it?
It's gusty.
Everything else is standard Toyota truck, body on frame, 4Runner stuff that has been around since this thing has been in production, early 1900s.
My one complaint with this vehicle, legitimately, is it's expensive. I think this thing's almost 50 G's. And you know for a fact Toyota's amortized their costs in engineering about 40 years ago.
Yeah, no,
so
they
this
do.
is a pure profit machine.
It's a depreciated thing in terms of tooling, manufacturing, all that. But it's still relevant. Look what's happening with the Bronco. So this is really Toyota's competition until they bring back the FJ Cruiser. Oh yeah, TRD Pro. This is a TRD Pro, right?
Yeah, and Mark, as I've heard from a certain instructor somewhere, it's not for beginners.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, let's get into this. On the street, all of the technical things they've changed in terms of suspension and dampers. This thing rides way better than I thought it would, and this is our second go around driving this. And I'm super impressed with how livable it is every day. There's no sacrifices here at all on daily driving.
And that's its advantage over something like a Wrangler, and I'm assuming the upcoming Bronco, where this lacks some of the fun and flair of the Wrangler. You can't take off the doors, it lacks a manual. This V6 is lethargic at best.
No, this V6 is, even though it might be the most reliable thing on the planet, it is the slowest thing on the planet.
Yeah, you need a sundial to measure 0 to 60.
Yeah, and I mean, this thing has a cult following not because you care about acceleration. It would just be nice to take it to the next level. That's what it would need, is about 100 more horsepower. But again,
yeah, you're giving up all of some of the character and the fun for something that rides exceptionally well. You know it'll outlive us for sure. This thing's going to be around for like 100 years. You could use this as a family heirloom. They're very reliable. The interior cabin is robust and durable, and it's super practical. I mean, obviously there are some deficiencies.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Even though it rides better, it handles better, and does all the dynamic things driving on the street better than like the Rubicon.
It's not as direct as you'd probably want for something that has independent front suspension, but at least it doesn't blow you around like the Rubicon does on the highway. My other problem with this vehicle comes to the transmission, and I know we talked about in the shop where all of this is about 1,000 years old, but this thing gear hunts all the time, and I never feel like it's in the right gear.
Yeah, that definitely, it's just indicative of the age, and people that aren't really Toyota people are like, why the hell would you buy this? It's so old, it's so archaic, and I think, there's a subset of buyers that want that. They don't want all the BS. Like, look at my Volvo, dude. I mean, that's like the other opposite, polar opposite. It's going to be in the shop all the time. Everything's going to break. It's all electronics. This just, you don't have to think about it. It just goes, it works, and that's it. That's really what this is about. You add the TRD stuff that's real and legitimate here, and we can take this off-road, and it's going to be about as 80% capable of something like a Rubicon.
Without all the street compromises, yeah.
Yes, and without all the storage compromises either. Even though you're losing the third row, which, you don't care about in this still is a really good hauler.
No, I mean, if you can get past the price,
the fuel economy,
and the performance, you're left with something that is always going to work. I think it looks badass.
No, it does. It looks cool. It looks like the apocalypse machine.
And there's a surprising amount of character. I thought I would hate this thing, but I ended up really enjoying it.
And that's 35 miles an hour.
So with that, Mark, let's head into the final thoughts.
All right. Final thoughts on the TRD Pro. As I was catching up with the last season of Full House, I realized I could pack my family in the TRD Pro with enough time to go off-roading like I am right here. And off-roading is more than just having fun. It's a lifestyle choice, something that the TRD Pro envelops you in. You can put a few things in the back. It's only a 2-row, so that means you can fit spare tires, camping equipment, grocery bags, you name it. I fit my 17-year-old son back there in his car seat. So let's talk about the pros and the cons. The biggest pro is the ride quality. It is very comfortable on any surface. It goes to the softer end, which is what makes something like this completely rational if you're going to buy something. You don't want to get beat up, and you don't. Any pavement surface is a non-issue, on or off-road. The second thing is usability. You know, this vehicle is tried and true. There's nothing more to say than it's been reliable, it's been a go-to product, and it has great resale value. Now, the biggest negatives are the engine and transmission combination. They just feel dated. Now, they are, of course, not going to give you any trouble, but just in terms of shifting quality, it's not the smoothest thing, it's not the quickest thing. The engine feels just completely lackluster. It's so underpowered for the weight of what this is. So you already know that. The electronics, the infotainment is just functional enough to get you going, and like Jack said, you have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is going to be what you're going to use if you're a smartphone user a majority of the time. Now, the last thing to discuss is, why would you spend all of this money on the TRD Pro? Well, I hope you're going to use it. I really do, because this is a special vehicle, one that they don't sell a lot of. It's going to have an amazing resale value, and it's something that you're going to be able to enjoy for years to come. Now, with the competition heating up, you know, with Jeep putting V8s and more things, you have Ford with the Bronco. Toyota's going to have to do a little bit more to stay relevant. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.